Yes, everybody, welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you are watching on our fast-growing YouTube channel, that's Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me from Little John Coliseum in South Carolina, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ just saw the Tar Heels pick up the 79-77 win over Clemson. Tar Heels improving to 17-7 on the year, 9-4 in ACC play. Clemson dropping to 12-11, 4-8 in the ACC. Brady Manek with the go-ahead basket, just over 3 seconds remaining in that one. Also, we'll talk about a little bit later, but 11-point comeback ties for Carolina's biggest this season, both in the same state as they did earlier in the year at College of Charleston. So, AJ, first thing I want to talk about, kind of already alluded to it, but that Brady Manek basket was big. The final play, the decisive play that ultimately got Carolina the 2-point win. Obviously, Clemson had a chance, got an okay look from three, but it was rushed because of the amount of time they had. And it did look like it might go in for a second, but wasn't to be. But Caleb Love stepping up in that moment was big. Drives to the baseline. I think Brady Manek sets the screen, rolls around, and follows it up. Caleb Love drives, looks like he's going to take maybe go for the shot, dishes it back to Brady Manek, who finishes with a relatively easy layup. I know it did bobble around the rim for a few times. I'm sure some Carolina fans are pretty nervous for a second, but ultimately, big play by Caleb at the end after a few poor weeks from him, and Brady Manek stepping up after a relatively quiet game, especially what he was able to do against Duke last weekend.
Caleb had a turnover at about the 4.5-minute mark. He had a turnover at about the 3:15 mark. He had a turnover about the 2:05 mark. The last one was when he stepped on the line. He got an inbound pass, stepped right on the line. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's one of those, it's just not your night. It's not your night. But then he hit a three with 36 seconds left. And then he had that drive and dish play. That was huge. And what I thought was interesting is the ball was inbounded to RJ. I thought it was going to be an RJ dribble and try to create either his own shot or hit somebody else with something, maybe Brady. And that isn't what they did. They got it to Caleb. Brady got a down screen. He came out and set sort of a ghost screen for Caleb. And Caleb handled that really, really well. I think that, Clemson played the pop because Brady does the pick and pop a lot. And and Brady then, was able to follow Caleb on the weak side. Yeah. And because the defender played the pop, it kind of gave Brady a lane, and Caleb sensed it. He read it, he sensed it, did a real nice job, getting it back to Brady for the layup. And he had a dish earlier, not that long earlier, where he drove and found Brady in the lane. Let's remember, for all the heat Caleb took from the Louisville game, he had 2 driving dishes to Brady in the second half of that game. We talked about the chemistry. He has an idea. All these added minutes these guys are playing together, one of the positive byproducts is chemistry and getting to know each other better. And I think Brady sort of knows where Caleb is Caleb knows where Brady is a lot. A lot of the assists on Brady's baskets are from Caleb, not just in that situation, but in general, swings on the perimeter, that kind of thing. So that was a beautiful play. Caleb used his basketball instincts to drive. He knew when to drive. He felt the defender was on him. He said after the game that he thought that if he tried to score, that they would block the shot. And when it drew the defenders over, you had Brady's defender, whom he had beaten to the lane, to the spot, and who was trailing him. And then the help side came over. So 2 defenders were completely out of the play at that point. Caleb's guy was on him. So there was nobody left there to defend Brady. And it was a great read by Caleb. But I'll tell you, this is really important because this is 2 weeks in a row where Caleb just did a lot of things that were either head scratching or people would consider negative. He had 5 turnovers tonight. He was 4 for 12 from the field. He's had a terrible shooting slip over the last 8 games. But who made the first 3 in overtime against Louisville? Who played well in overtime against Louisville? Caleb did. Who stepped up tonight and made the 3 with 36 seconds left after a bad shooting night and already had 5 turnovers, 3 inside the last 5 minutes? And then who made that play? And who trusted him to make that play? His coach did. Yeah. Armando said afterward that confidence isn't an issue with Caleb, because somebody asked him, how do you think this might help Caleb's confidence? He said Caleb has learned how to shrug things off. Well, we've seen living proof in the Louisville game and tonight that he knows how to shrug things off. Now, did he shrug it off against Duke? Well, by the time he started a little bit in that game, the game was out of hand anyway. So take that, put it aside. Everybody's going to go at their pace, not the pace that the fans want, not the pace that the media wants, and sometimes not even the pace that coaches want. Each player has their own pace. And for Caleb to step up and make big plays after tough nights, and he's done this in the last 2 road games, both nail biters in frenzied environments, that's a sign of growth. And if there's a sign of growth for Caleb, it's a sign of growth for this team, because they had to have this game. If they didn't have this game, they'd be staring at the NIT, because the win opportunities, the valuable wins, are just not there unless they'd be able to steal one in Cameron or win the ACC tournament. So this club needs to win. They need to win games. They need to make plays to win games. That's the only way they're going to get better. And they did enough tonight to do that. And a guy who's really struggled the last 3 weeks made the biggest play of the game. Yeah,
Caleb Love stepped up big time. It was a great pass, great play by him. And like I said, nice play by Brady to follow up and finish like he did as well. I want to talk about before we do this, actually, I'm going to run through some stats as I always do. Armando Bacot led the way, 24 points, 10 boards for him, 18th double-double of the season for Armando. RJ Davis, 16 points, 6 assists, 0 turnovers. So nice night for him. Brady Manick and Leaky Black both had 11 points apiece. Caleb Love, 10 points, 4 assists, 5 turnovers, though. So like you said, not the greatest game once again from Caleb, 4-12 from the field, but he steps up late and makes a play, and that speaks to the kind of player he can be. So I want to switch back to the end of the first half now, the last 10 minutes, I should say, of the first half, because I thought that was really when the game flipped on its head. You saw Carolina start out poorly. I believe Clemson got up to an 8-0 lead over the Tar Heels, and I'm sure a lot of Carolina fans were kind of sitting there like, oh, here we go again, kind of eerily in some ways reminded me of the Duke game. But after that, Clemson went cold a little bit, didn't shoot very well, didn't necessarily play very well. And Carolina was able to kind of stick around, fight their way back in it. Ultimately, end up taking a 30-25 lead going into the break. It was 19-8 at one point as well. So like I said, 11-point comeback ties for Carolina's second biggest of the season. So that was really when the game flipped on its head, because obviously the second half was a completely different story after that. But there was a point in this game, let's not forget, where it wasn't looking great for the Tar Heels. So credit again to them for finding the way back into it and continuing to fight.
Yeah, they outscored Clemson. It was 19-8, so they outscored them 22-6 for the rest of the first half. And really, the first 10 minutes of the game, Carolina looked like, Duke had a hangover Monday night from
they did
winning big. It's like Carolina was punch drunk from Monday night, and they weren't from Saturday night, and they weren't getting up well. The Tar Heels looked horrible in the first 10 minutes, and Clemson looked fantastic. Clemson actually should have had a bigger lead. Tigers had a lot 100%. Of open shots they missed. And I posted something on our board the other day that in an 18-day span, beginning with the Miami game through the Duke game, Carolina had allowed 4 different opponents, a player from 4 different teams, to hit career highs. And it's not like a dude off the bench scoring 8. I'm talking like well into the 20s. And I thought, okay, well, who's going to do that tonight for Clemson? Is, Olamir Dawes, does he go off and go for 30 or something like that? And it kind of looked early like, they were getting so many good looks. At some point, someone's just going to start hitting. They keep feeding them. And that, Hemingway had hit a couple big threes in a row for Clemson. And you just were looking for Clemson to do whatever it had to do to open up this game, because Carolina was ripe for an early killing, but it didn't happen. The Tigers didn't make shots, and the Tar Heels eventually regrouped and played very well. In fact, I think Clemson was 2 for their last 14 in the first half, and the Tar Heels suddenly started scoring, and Armando was scoring. He had 12 points over that stretch. And really, at one point when Armando got into the 20s, when he scored his 21st point, the Tar Heels had 45. So he almost had half their points, and then they scored 34 more points the rest of the game, and he had 3, and he only had 1 point after he went to the bench with his 4th foul with about 11 and a half minutes or so left in the game. And I think it's impressive that the Tar Heels kind of pulled their socks up. They got up and they said, okay, let's get some juice. Let's go. And maybe it took 10 minutes for them to disconnect from a Duke game. Maybe it really still was lingering psychologically. I have no idea, because they were bad early and the body language was not great. The body language was not great. I had people texting me, asking me, what's their body language like? Well, it's not good. I mean, you could see it on TV, I'm sure. And here it didn't look good, but I think Clemson kept the door open for them, and the Tar Heels eventually went through it. And then we had a pretty interesting basketball game. 2 clubs that needed a win, and they kind of traded a lot of blows. It was pretty fun. After both teams started getting going, it was pretty fun basketball. So the last 10 minutes of the first half is why the Tar Heels were in position to win in the second half. And you're talking about a game that had, 13 or 14 lead changes and 10 ties. And most of that was the last, 15, 16 minutes of the game. So these are two teams that needed to win. And these are, Clemson to their, they don't have Hunter Tyson. I think if he would have played, there could have been a difference. He could have presented some problems for Carolina. So both clubs are kind of dealing with some stuff, but Carolina was able to make one more play than Clemson did and get the win. And that first half was huge. If they don't do that to close out the first half, second half would have been a laugh. They've had a lot of ugly games on the road, and this would have been another one.
Yeah, like I said, that really kind of flipped the script of the game and allowed Carolina in the second half to have that little bit of a cushion. And obviously it turned into a battle then, but big time switch in the first half really paid dividends for Carolina down the line. Let's talk about what it means, like we always kind of like to hit on in this video to wrap it up. You obviously got Florida State coming up this Saturday in Chapel Hill, but I think ultimately focusing on this game, it's another tough, gritty, hard fought, whatever synonym you want to use for that, win for Carolina. I mean, it reminded me of the Louisville game in some ways, not because of people chucking water bottles or hot dogs on the floor, whatever they were throwing. But in terms of the and obviously, I mean, you can attest to this more than I can. It didn't seem like I know you did. Seemed like a good environment, Clemson. Maybe not as hostile as Louisville was. That goes without saying.
It was loud, but it was spirited. Yeah. This wasn't the kind of environment Louisville was.
So
it rarely is down here.
No, exactly. But you're seeing Carolina be able to do that on the road in consecutive road games. Obviously, the Duke game didn't go like they wanted it to, but it's another tough win for Carolina. Armando Bacot also fouled out tonight. 24 and 10 for him as well. Carolina had to finish without him down the stretch after he fouled out late. So many different kind of factors that went into Carolina winning, whether it's the comeback, battling through adversity, not having Armando down the stretch like I win, and just trying to figure out a way to pull out the win. I think ultimately this is an important win for the Tar Heels. And like you said, it's getting to a point now where all these games are kind of must wins for Carolina's NCAA tournament hopes, especially when you look at how poor the ACC is. So I think you take it home, you run with it, and you prepare for Florida State on Saturday.
We've got 24 games of intel on this Carolina basketball team, and I would say that they can be terrible, and they've been terrible more than several times, and they could be really good in stretches. They've been really good a few times, Michigan, Virginia, et cetera. I think NC State will qualify that as really good. And then they just kind of, have bad stretches and some positive stretches. I think that's kind of who they are. I mean, even today inside this game, they were terrible for the first 10 minutes. They still figured out a way to win, and they did it with Armando in foul trouble. He scored one of their final 25 points, and they found a way to win. He wasn't on the bench. He wasn't on the floor late. He was on the bench watching everything transpire. And in a way, maybe if that final play was good because they had the clear out already. Because Brady was out setting the screen and Armando wasn't already down there. Maybe the help side would have been a little bit different. Who knows? Who knows how it would have played out? But for this team to win the way they did at Louisville last week, which was a back alley brawl, that was a fight. This wasn't a fight like that. Clemson, I thought was fairly physical at times. A lot of offensive fouls away from the ball tonight. But I just thought it was just two teams going at it, playing basketball the way the game should be played as far as intensity, a little bit of physicality. Carolina had some stuff that was called. They had two flagrants, and RJ had the tech for saying something to the official, which he wouldn't comment on after the game.
Yeah, that was.
And Clemson pushed them. I mean, Clemson played hard and played well late offensively. They were getting a lot of stuff and they were scoring. They had 25 points at halftime and they finished with 77. That's 52 points in the second half. So, whatever Brad had his team do, it was working. But the Tar Heels found a way, and that's what all that matters right now. Everybody wants to judge this team based on North Carolina standards, and I understand that because I do think, in a sense, every Carolina team is based on Carolina standards, but they need to judge this team through the first 23 games. What have you seen? Okay, well, how can they grow and improve from there? Because they still have a lot that they can still accomplish. They must get better. They must get better multiple ways. They must get better defensively. Caleb's got to get out of his shooting slump and stop, kicking the ball around and stuff. So there's a lot of growth, but they've been able to win 2 road games in the league. That was probably Louisville's last stand. We talked about that last week. They were terrible over the weekend. And Clemson's not a bad club. They've got parts. They have parts that can give Carolina trouble, and they were able to withstand that with Armando on the bench, with their best player on the bench. The guy, if they have a leader, it's probably Armando because he's far more vocal than Leaky. Leaky just really isn't vocal enough to be a leader. So they figured it out. I think right now this team just needs to win. They need to win and do a couple things each game that shows growth. And in 3.5 weeks, they roll into Cameron. If they can pile up a bunch of wins, they can go in there and test themselves, see how different they are from the first meeting against Duke, because they don't have those kinds of value opportunities in this league right now because the league is so down. To be perfectly honest with you, Jacob, they're now 17-7. They still don't have a win over an NCAA tournament team. Yeah, they could win the next 6 before going to Duke. They could be 23-7 and still have no wins over NCAA tournament teams. That's why this club just needs to win. If they win enough games that the selection committee can't keep them out, even though they've been horrific against really good teams, then maybe that's the recipe to getting in the dance. Who knows? Right now, I wouldn't even worry about that. Right now, they just need to win games, and they need to find ways to win in tight situations. They haven't had tight games until the last week, and they've won both. So I guess there's something to say for that.
Oh, 100%. Another opportunity for Carolina to get those wins like you're mentioning this Saturday in Chapel Hill against Florida State. We'll obviously be there for that one. So for all your coverage from tonight's game, of course, keep it locked to TarHillIllustrated.com and leading up to the game in Chapel Hill this weekend. Carolina escaping Clemson 79-77. Important win for the Tar Heels in their NCAA tournament hopes. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Appreciate you guys keeping it locked to Tar Heel Illustrated. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well so you know every single time we upload. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.